I walked away from a 20-year friendship and felt instant relief. I didn't plan to end a 20-year friendship that Tuesday afternoon. I swear I didn't. I was just sitting in that grimy little cafe we always went to after work, sipping my half-warm Americano, staring across the table at a man I barely recognized anymore. And then it just snapped. Let me back up. Call him Matt. I've known Matt since we were in middle school. We bonded over video games, awkward crushes, broken skateboards, and our mutual hatred for Mrs. Gentry's 8th grade algebra tests. He was my best man at my wedding. I helped him move 3 times twice without him even packing beforehand. We've worked at the same tech company for the last 7 years. Basically, our lives were stitched together like a bad DIY project that somehow held on through duct tape and nostalgia. But lately it felt like the duct tape was peeling off, and I was the only one still trying to smooth it back down. See, Matt had this way of making everything about him. Every win I had was met with a must be nice. Every vent session of mine was hijacked into his latest struggle. I got promoted last year, and he didn't even say congrats, just started bitching about how our manager clearly had a favorite. Spoiler, it wasn't favoritism. I busted my ass for that role while he coasted on half effort and attitude. Over time, I found myself shrinking, laughing off his jabs when he mocked my clothes, my goals, my fiancé's vegetarian cooking, letting it slide when he talked over me in group settings or made passive-aggressive comments at work. I kept telling myself, you've known each other forever. It's just how he is. Don't be dramatic. But the truth is, I was being dramatic internally. I carried this tight knot of frustration and guilt around for years. Every time I thought about pulling away, I'd get hit with the sunk cost panic. You've known him for 20 years. You don't throw that away. What kind of friend does that? I was afraid that leaving would make me the villain in some unspoken story. Then came Tuesday. We were supposed to just grab coffee. I needed a bit of a breather from work, and I guess part of me, the stubborn, hopeful part, thought maybe we could reconnect. Like maybe the universe would give me a sign that I was overthinking things. Instead, Matt showed up 20 minutes late, plopped into the chair with a loud sigh, and launched into a rant about how no one at the office respects him, how everyone sucks up to management, and how some people just get everything handed to them. I knew that last one was aimed at me. I just landed a big project lead role. Again, not handed, earned. I even offered to bring him in on it. He declined, saying it sounded like busy work. So I just sat there, listening, nodding, until I couldn't. He made a snide comment about how my fiancé probably helped me prep for the project like I always needed a mommy to hold my hand, and I swear something just cracked in my chest. Not a loud break, more like that pop when a zipper finally gives out after years of strain. I put my coffee down, I looked him in the eye, and I said quietly, calmly, "Matt, do you even like me?" He blinked. "What?" "I'm serious. Do you even like me? Because you sure as hell don't act like it." He scoffed. "Dude, what are you talking about?" "I mean, listen to yourself," I said. "You make fun of everything I care about. You downplay anything good in my life. You only ever talk about yourself. And I keep showing up year after year, acting like this is still a friendship. But it's not. It's a one-way street, and I'm tired." There was a long, awkward silence. For a second, I thought maybe he'd get it. Maybe this would be the wake-up call. But instead, he leaned back and said, "So what, you think you're better than me now?" That's when I knew it was over. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just nodded, stood up, and said, "I think I'm better to myself now." And then I walked out. The weirdest part, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel guilty. I felt relief. Instant, almost overwhelming relief. Like I'd been dragging a dead weight behind me and finally let go of the rope. I spent 20 years calling that man my best friend. But the truth is, we outgrew each other a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. The thing is, if you asked 18-year-old me who my ride or die was, I'd have said Matt without hesitation. No one else even came close. We went through everything together, crappy summer jobs at that burger joint by the lake, sneaking beers into the woods like idiots, road trips in his busted Civic with the AC that only worked when you hit the dashboard just right. I can't deny those were good times. Back then he was funny, loud, yeah, obnoxious sometimes, but funny, confident. People gravitated to him. He had this reckless charm that made him the center of attention at every party, and I guess I liked being pulled into that orbit. I was the quieter one, more laid back. He'd make the plans, I'd go along. He liked being the lead, and I didn't mind being the sidekick. But now, looking back, I realized there were signs. Little moments where things didn't sit right. Like the time in college when I told him I was thinking about switching majors to computer science. He laughed and said, "Dude, you really think you're smart enough for that grind?" I laughed too, brushed it off like a joke. But I didn't switch majors that semester. I waited another year. Or when I had my first serious girlfriend and he'd constantly undermine her. "You sure she's not using you? She seems kinda fake, man. She probably just wants a nice guy until someone better comes along." Eventually, I started doubting her, even though she'd done nothing wrong. We broke up. He said, "Told you so." At the time, I thought he was just being protective. Now I realize he just didn't like when my attention wasn't on him. Still, I kept showing up, even when he flaked on plans, even when he borrowed money and forgot to pay me back, even when he accidentally hit on my dates at parties. There was always some excuse. He was tired, drunk, joking, misunderstood, and I kept thinking that's just Matt. When we ended up working at the same company years later, it almost felt like fate. I got hired first, then recommended him when a spot opened. At the time, it felt right. We were finally going to level up together. For a while, it was okay. We'd grab lunch, shoot the shit, laugh about old times. He made quick friends with the louder crowd in the office, sales guys, some marketing folks. I stayed mostly with the dev team. We worked in different departments, but our paths crossed often enough. But over time, it got weird. Subtle things. Like how he'd always one-up me in front of others. If I mentioned I pulled an all-nighter on a bug fix, he'd go, "Oh yeah, I was up till 3 closing a deal and then still hit the gym." If I got praise from a manager, he'd crack a joke about how I was clearly brown-nosing. He started calling me golden boy around others. At first, it sounded like teasing. Then it didn't. When I landed my first internal award, not a huge deal, just a company shout-out, I was genuinely proud. It had taken months of work. Matt, he didn't say congrats, he just said, "Wow, guess they'll give awards to anyone these days." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because what else was I supposed to do? What stung more was how other people took cues from him. If Matt joked about me, others felt free to pile on. I became the try-hard in the office meme culture. Suddenly, I was the guy who took things too seriously just because I did my job well. It started to affect how people treated me, like being competent was cringe. And through all of this, I still called him my best friend. Why? Because I thought I had to. Because I remembered the kid who defended me when bullies shoved me into a locker. Because I remembered us skipping school to build a makeshift treehouse and swearing we grow old sitting in it with beers in hand. Because I thought maybe if I just waited long enough, that version of Matt would come back. But he didn't, and the longer I stayed, the smaller I became. Until the cafe. That one conversation blew the lid off everything I'd been ignoring. For the first time in years, I let myself see Matt for who he had become, not who he used to be. The next day at work was tense. I'd texted him that night just one line, "I think we need space." He didn't reply. When I walked into the office, he was already there, laughing too loud at something on his phone with 2 of the marketing guys. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just pretended I didn't exist. I half expected some grand confrontation, maybe even a public blow-up. That's always been his style. But instead, he went cold. I was frozen out. Subtle stuff at first, not tagging me in group chats, not inviting me to lunch. Then the whispers started. "You and Matt good. Something happened. I heard he said you threw him under the bus." Which I hadn't. I hadn't said a damn thing to anyone, but clearly he had. So I did the one thing I'd never done before. I stopped defending him. I stopped brushing things off. I stopped explaining his behavior. I let the silence speak for itself. Setting boundaries when you've never had any feels weird at first, like you're being rude, even when you're just protecting yourself. The morning after the cafe fallout, I sat at my desk, opened Slack, and deleted our private chat. Not muted, deleted. It felt like ripping off a Band-Aid that had been stuck there for years. My chest actually felt lighter. That week I started eating lunch alone on purpose. Not in some dramatic, sit in the corner with sad music, way, just quiet, intentional solitude. I'd grab a sandwich, go sit in the park behind the building and just breathe. No Matt, no noise, no performance. At first it felt awkward. People noticed. I got a couple of texts. "You good? Missed you at lunch. Matt said you're going through something." I ignored most of them. I wasn't ready to explain. And honestly, I didn't owe anyone a story. My fiancée, Rachel, noticed the shift too. That weekend, as we were cooking dinner together, tofu stir-fry, not my fave, but I'm learning, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter, like in your face. You're not carrying something around anymore." I told her everything. For the first time, I laid it all out. The comments, the passive digs, the way I kept making myself smaller to keep Matt comfortable. How I thought I had to stay in the friendship because we'd known each other forever. She didn't say "I told you so," even though I know she wanted to. She never liked him. Instead, she hugged me and said, "I'm proud of you, you finally chose you." And that hit me harder than anything. Meanwhile, at work, things were heating up. Matt wasn't being quiet anymore. It started with the sarcasm. Little barbs in meetings, "Oh, maybe Golden Boy has a better idea," or "I'm sure my name will have the perfect slide deck like always." Some people laughed, others side-eyed. No one said anything. Then he went further. I found out he'd been telling people I stole credit on a shared project, that I had manipulated our manager to make myself look better. Complete BS. He hadn't even wanted to be part of the project. I had the receipts, emails, messages, documented check-ins. Still, the rumor started to stick. I got pulled into a meeting with HR. Nothing serious, just a check-in. They heard concerns about team dynamics and wanted to make sure everything was okay. I kept it professional. I didn't badmouth Matt. I just calmly explained my side, shared the emails, showed my work trail. The HR rep nodded a lot, took notes, said they appreciated my transparency. But inside I was seething. Not because I was afraid of losing my job. My performance was solid, and I knew it. But because I finally saw how far Matt was willing to go to keep control of the narrative. He didn't just want space, he wanted revenge. I almost fell into the trap again, almost sent him a long message trying to clear the air. But Rachel stopped me. "You don't owe him closure," she said. "He's not looking to talk, he's looking to win." So I stopped playing the game. I stayed in my lane. I did my job, did it well, and focused on building real connections, people who supported each other instead of competing. I started going to lunch with my own team. I invited a couple of junior devs to shadow me on a project and gave them credit when we wrapped it successfully. The atmosphere shifted, subtly, but I could feel it. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was becoming the person I'd always wanted to be at work, reliable, respected, seen. Matt didn't like that. One day I walked into the office kitchen and found him already there, alone, making coffee. He looked up, met my eyes, and said, "So this is who you are now, huh?" I didn't respond, just grabbed my mug. He smirked. "Don't get too comfortable. People forget real fast who helped them get where they are." I paused, turned slowly, and said, "Yeah, they also remember who tried to tear them down on the way." Then I walked out. That was the last real conversation we ever had. It didn't take long after that kitchen encounter for Matt to make his next move. A week later, I got pinged by my manager. "Can you swing by for a quick chat?" I walked into her office and immediately saw the HR rep sitting there again. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. They asked me to sit. "Someone submitted a formal complaint," my manager started, glancing at the HR rep. "It alleges that you've been creating a hostile work environment for one of your peers." I already knew. I kept my tone steady. "Matt." The HR rep nodded. "We're required to investigate all formal reports. We'll be conducting a series of interviews with team members and reviewing communication logs." I nodded. "I understand." Inside, I was furious. Not scared, not anymore, just done. They asked if I had anything I wanted to share proactively. So I did. I pulled out a folder I'd started keeping the week after the cafe's screenshots, emails, Slack threads, even one or two messages where Matt had slipped up and written something clearly unprofessional. I watched the HR rep's eyes scan the papers, then flick toward my manager, who raised her eyebrows slightly. I didn't smear him. I didn't go off. I simply said, "This has been going on for months. I've tried to keep it professional, but this is not okay anymore." They said they'd follow up. Over the next week, I watched the dynamic in the office begin to shift. People were being pulled in for interviews. Some of them came out pale. Others looked uncomfortable. Word got around, as it always does. I didn't say a word. I kept my head down and focused on work. And then it happened. Matt made a mistake, a big one. He sent an aggressive Slack message to one of our newer interns, something about learning to take jokes, after she told him privately that his comments in a meeting had made her uncomfortable. Only, instead of sending it to her, he posted it in the general team chat. In front of everyone. The message got deleted within minutes, but it was too late. People had seen. Screenshots were already flying around. That intern, she went directly to HR, and this time it wasn't subtle. That same day, Matt was asked to work from home until further notice. I wish I could say I felt satisfied, vindicated, triumphant. But honestly, I felt relieved, not because he was finally facing consequences, but because I realized I wasn't responsible for carrying his mess anymore. For years, I'd made it my job to smooth things over, to protect him, to absorb the fallout of his actions so no one else would see what I saw. But now everyone saw, and I didn't have to explain a damn thing. That Friday, my manager called me in again, just the two of us this time. "You handled this with a lot of professionalism," she said, "and I just want you to know people noticed. You have allies here." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice enough to speak. She smiled. "Also, we're considering you for a leadership role in the next hearing round. You've already been doing the work, might as well give you the title." I left her office and sat in my chair for a long time, just staring at my screen. Not because I doubted it, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd earned something without Matt dragging me behind him like dead weight. It was mine alone. About 2 months after Matt left the office, I realized something weird. I hadn't thought about him in days. Not in that obsessive way I used to, where I'd replay every conversation, overanalyze every eye roll, every joke that cut a little too deep. He used to take up so much real estate in my mind that I didn't know where I ended and he began. But now my life was just quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in years, I liked the quiet. One morning, I walked into the office a little early and found Sam, a teammate I'd mentored recently, already at her desk with a coffee in one hand and her hoodie sleeves pulled down over her palms. "Hey," she said, smiling. "Guess what? They approved my proposal for the onboarding revamp." I grinned. "That's amazing. I'm not even surprised. It was solid." She paused. "Honestly, I was going to give up on it. I thought no one would care. But then I remembered what you said about taking up space like you belong there. That stuck with me." I think my face must have done a whole emotional dance, because she laughed softly and added, "You're actually a good boss, you know." She said it casually, like it was no big deal. But to me, it was everything. Because I'd spent years believing I had to play second fiddle to someone else, that I wasn't meant to lead, that if I wasn't being dragged around by Matt's orbit, I'd just disappear. But here I was, leading, showing up, being me. And not just at work. I started reconnecting with people I hadn't had the energy for before. Friends from college. My cousin in another state I always meant to call. I even joined a local board game night at the library, just walked in, sat down with a bunch of strangers, and played a ridiculous game of betrayal at House on the Hill with people who didn't know anything about my history. They just knew me now. One night, Rachel and I were on the couch watching a cooking show, and I turned to her out of nowhere and said, "I think I'm happy." She smiled, that slow, knowing smile that made me fall in love with her in the first place. "Took you long enough." We both laughed. That's when I knew I was really out of it, out of the cycle, out of the storm. I could see it now, all the red flags I'd ignored. The control, the belittling, the gaslighting, the way he'd made himself my measuring stick. And I finally understood. Longevity doesn't equal loyalty. Time invested isn't always time well spent. And just because someone been there forever doesn't mean they're meant to stay. We outgrow people, and that's okay. Walking away from Matt felt like shedding a second skin. At first it hurt, felt raw, exposed, but now I breathe easier. I don't hate him, I don't wish him harm. I just don't wish anything about him. He's no longer part of my story. The last time I actually saw him, was at a mutual friend's birthday a few weeks ago. We nodded across the room. No hard stares, no tension, just a quiet acknowledgement of something that used to be important and now is. He looked tired, and me, I felt light.